Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Torah is for Everyone. Tonight we're going to be looking at the portion, a double portion, Behar, Bechukotai, and it's a very powerful one. So I welcome all those who are watching, and let us begin. Let me share the screen. So let's go to Behar, which means on the mountain, and we know that the mountain is Mount Sinai. So Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. And he was told, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you enter the land that I am giving to you, noten lecha, the land shall observe the Shabbat." So we know that that every 7 days, we as a people were to observe the Sabbath. We rest on the seventh day, and then we're refreshed and we begin our week again on the eighth day. Now, verses 1 to 7 here is going to go to something called the Shemitah, the Shabbat for the land. The land would also need to rest after the seventh year. Now, if you're a farmer, how would you survive? This is the process of going from emunah, faith, to bitachon, trust. God wants his people to learn to trust him. Now, faith does not mean blind dependence upon the Creator. He's teaching us that with freedom comes responsibility. So in the sixth year, the people could begin preparing for the seventh year, and God would make sure that the land would provide enough for everyone. We're going to read that, since the land would just keep producing. And then in the eighth year, the land is prepared to produce its new crop, which we would reap in the ninth year. So it's all about the Creator seeing that we trust him to provide for us. And trust is everything in a relationship. So let's see what it says. 6 years you may sow your field, and 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the yield. But in the seventh year, the land shall have a Shabbat rest, complete rest. So the land is going to have a Shabbat rest, a Sabbath of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your untrimmed vines. It shall be a complete rest for the land. But you may eat whatever the land during its Sabbath will produce. You, your male and female slaves, the hired and bound laborers who live with you, the cattle and beasts in your land, may all eat its yield. You shall count off 7 weeks of years. And it's interesting here because 7 times 7, right after Pesach, we start to count 7 weeks until we get to the 49th day. And here it's 7 weeks of years, which will bring us to what's called the Yovel, the Jubilee. 7 is, as I said before, is a powerful number. It's a number that represents the picture that God is teaching us something. Shavuot is 7 times 7. The Jubilee is 7 times 7. And it's showing us that another new cycle is going to begin with the blast of the shofar, which will be calling us to, which we'll read here in the next verse, Yom Kippur, at the time of the Yuvel, the Jubilee, when everything lost is restored. What a miracle. God truly has us covered. I was thinking of how in the Yovel, the house that I lost, that I sold, would be given back to me. What a beautiful thought. Then you shall sound the horn loud, the blast of the shofar, in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, the day of Yom Kippur. You shall have the horn sounded throughout your land. Remember, when the blast of the horn sounded, it always meant that God was trying to get our attention. And here it was that we should set apart, hallow, the 50th year. When you proclaim release, you set free all the land throughout the land for all its inhabitants. It is a jubilee for you. Each of you shall return to your holding, and each of you shall return to your family. Sometimes if someone owed money, they had to sell themselves as a servant to work for somebody who was wealthy. But here in the Jubilee year, in the 50th year, he can go back home. He was set free. It's marvelous. The 50th year shall be a Yovel, a Jubilee for you. You shall not sow, neither shall you reap the aftergrowth of the harvest, the untrimmed, or harvest the untrimmed vines, for it is a Jubilee. It shall be set apart, kadosh, for you, kadesh for you. You may only eat the growth directly from the field. In the year of Jubilee, each of you shall return to your holding. Let me see what notes I took here. Where am I? Not yet. When you sell your property to your neighbor, some people had to sell their property if they were in debt. Or if you bought anything from your neighbor, you shall not wrong another. God is constantly speaking about justice. We are to treat our neighbor with justice. When you buy from your neighbor, you shall deduct only for the number of years since the Jubilee in selling to you, and that person shall charge you only for the remaining crop years. The more such years, the higher the price you pay. The fewer such years, the lower the price. For what is being sold to you is a number of harvests. And you, Richard, being an accountant, would understand this very well. You'd be able to figure out how much was owed in the year of Jubilee when their property or their land was turned back to them. Let me just fix this here.
Now, that is something that accountants would handle.
Exactly.
I mean, it comes up with oil fields a lot. It's called depletion allowance.
Okay.
But we won't go into there now. Can they estimate how much oil is available underground, and they make a valuation that way? But okay, but that's something else now. I'm still listening.
Okay. And what's very important for him is that we are compassionate. We don't hurt another person. Do not wrong another, but fear your God. For I, Yud-He Vav-He, am your God. And in this you're going to see is repeated all through the Torah. You shall observe, asitem, from the word oseh, to do. Do my chukotai, my ordinances, the things that I may not understand, but I have to do them. But mishpatim, my judgments. So the chukim are the fourth and fifth commandments, keeping the Sabbath, honoring the parents, and everything related to that. All the other chukotim, the chukim that he talks about. The mishpatim are the last 5 commandments. How to honor our neighbors, what we need to do to take care of our neighbors, so that you may live securely upon the land. Now, God loves justice. And when we're told to fear him, it means we revere him, we honor him, we respect him, we obey the chukim and mishpatim. We love our neighbor as we love ourselves, so that we may live upon the land in security. If we look at the land of Israel today, is it living in security? And we know that it's not. So something tells me that we are not observing his chukim and his mishpatim as a nation, as a people. There are some who do, always a remnant, but not the people as a whole. And this idea is repeated often in the scriptures. Everyone is looking for a way to find peace and fight anti-Semitism. And here, God is giving us the way. But most people are not interested in his way. We're more interested in doing like Frank Sinatra sang, I did it my way. We don't observe God's commandments with a full heart. Of course, we're going to fail. Of course, we're going to make mistakes. but God always looks at the heart. Look what he says, I will command, it says ordain, I will command, vitz, va, tziviti, from mitzvah, I will command my blessing for you in the 6th year, so that the land shall yield a crop sufficient for 3 years. He was going to provide. In that 6 years, the crop would be so abundant that it would yield enough for the next 3 years. And we would have to do something about it. We would have to make sure that was stored, so that when we sow here in the 8th year, we would still be eating the crop from the 6th year and the 7th year. You will be eating the old until the 9th year. So in the 6th year, he's going to give us enough for 3. In the 7th year, we harvest from the land, not only us, but all the neighbors around us, the poor, the stranger among us. The 8th year, we can plant again, we reseed, and then in the 9th year. So that's trusting God for 3 years. And that's not an easy thing for us to do. But look at this. The land must not be sold beyond reclaim. In other words, don't sell it to your enemies who don't know the Torah, and it becomes beyond what we can reclaim. For the land is mine. You are but strangers resident with me. In other words, the land of Israel does not belong to the people of Israel. It belongs to the God of Israel. So it cannot be sold to anyone outside Israel who would not be willing to give it back during the year of Jubilee. Throughout the land that you hold, you must provide for the redemption of the land. So in other words, whatever property comes into your possession because someone sold it or someone had to give it over to you, whatever happened to that person, you must provide for its redemption when the Jubilee comes. If it's one of your kins who is in dire straits, who's having a problem, and who has to sell part of a holding, the nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what that relative has sold. I think this is one of the reasons that we read the book of Ruth and we read about Boaz, who was the kinsman redeemer, because we know that Naomi left with her husband, what was his name, Eli, and their 2 sons. She left and they went to Moab. And when they came back, their land should have come back to them, but here the kinsman redeemer would come and redeemed what the relative had sold. If any party has no one to be redeemer, but prospers and acquires enough to redeem with, the years since its sales shall be computed, and the difference shall be refunded to the party to whom it was sold, so that the person returns to that holding. Again, we would need Richard and his calculations to know how to do that. If that person lacks sufficient means to recover it, what was sold shall remain with the purchaser until the Yovel, until the Jubilee. In the Jubilee year, it shall be released so that the person returns to that holding. Can you imagine the sheer joy of being able to come back to what was yours? If any party sells a dwelling, a house in a walled city, it may be redeemed until a year has elapsed since its sale. The redemption period shall be a year. If it is not redeemed before a full year has elapsed, the house in the walled city shall pass to the purchaser beyond reclaim throughout the ages. It shall not be released in the Jubilee. So, if it is not redeemed before a full year has elapsed, the house in the walled city shall pass to the purchaser beyond reclaim. So, this was a case where it would not be released in the Yovel. But houses in villages that had no encircling walls shall be classed as open country. They may be redeemed, and they shall be released through the Jubilee. Why? To tell you the truth, personally, I don't know. If anybody has an idea why, you're welcome to give your opinion. So all these verses from 24 to 34 were all the rules around repairing the Jubilee. And then we're going to go to verses 35 to 55, where it's going to talk to us about how do we treat relatives? How do we treat slaves or hired laborers or servants to prepare for the Jubilee? As for the cities of Levi, the houses in the city it holds, Levi shall forever have the right of redemption. Such property as may be redeemed from Levi, houses sold in the city, it holds, shall be released through the Jubilee, for the houses in the cities of Levi are its holdings among the Israelites. But the enclosed land about its cities cannot be sold, for that is its holding for all time. If your relative who is in dire straits comes under your authority and they're held by you as though resident aliens, let them live by your side. Do not exact interest, but fear your God. Let your relative live with you as such. We have to take care of our own people. That's why in our city, we have the Hebrew Free Loan Society. Somebody has to come and sign for them, but they are responsible to pay back a loan without interest. Do not lend your money at advance interest, nor give your food at interest. I, the Lord, am your God. He's reminding us that He brought us out of Egypt. He gave us the land to be our God. If your kin under you continues in straits and must be given over to you, do not subject them to the treatment of a slave. Remaining with you as a hired or bound laborer, they shall serve with you only until the Jubilee year. Then they, along with any children, shall be free of your authority. They shall go back to their family and return to their ancestral holding. For they are my servants, whom I freed from the land of Egypt. They may not give themselves over to you in servitude as a slave. You shall not rule over them ruthlessly, not like Pharaoh did with the Israelites, but you shall fear, honor, revere your God. Such male and female slaves as you may have, it is from the nations round about you that you may acquire male and female slaves. In other words, God gave us permission to have slaves, but not from our own people, but from outside our people, from the nations. But we would be taught how to treat them with justice, not like we were treated in Egypt. You may also buy them from among the children of alien residents. These were not the ger. Those were those who were sold as slaves, or from the families that are among you, who were born in your land. They shall become your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property for all time. Such you may treat as slaves. But as for your Israelite kin, no one shall rule ruthlessly over another. If a resident alien among you has prospered, and your kin, who was in dire straits, comes under that one's authority and is given over to that resident alien among you, or to an offshoot of an alien's family, your relatives shall have the right of redemption even after being given over. Typically, a brother shall do the redeeming. So we shall never again, in other words, become slaves to any other nation. Not an uncle's son, or an uncle's son shall do the redeeming. Anyone who is of the same flesh shall do the redeeming. Or having prospered, your formerly impoverished kin may do the redeeming. The total shall be computed with the purchaser as from the year of being given over to the other until the Yovel, the Jubilee. The price of a sale shall be applied to the number of years, although it were for a term as a hired laborer under the other's authority. If many years remain, your kin shall pay back for the redemption in proportion to the purchase price. If very few years remain until the Jubilee, so shall it be computed. Payment shall be made for the redemption according to the years involved. One shall be under the other's authority as a laborer hired by the year. The other shall not rule ruthlessly in your sight. If not redeemed in any of those ways, that person, along with any children, shall go free in the Jubilee year. For it is to me that the Israelites are servants. We are not to serve any other nations. We are not to serve anybody but God. They are my servants, whom I freed from the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Now we're going to chapter 26, and you'll see it begins with the second commandment. You shall not make idols for yourself, or set up for yourself carved images or pillars, or place figured stones in your land to worship upon, for I, the Lord, am your God. And then he goes next to the fourth commandment. You shall keep my Shabbats and honor my sanctuary, my mikdash. It's mine. I am the Lord. Ani Yud He Vav He. Then we go to the second part of our portion, Bechukotai. Again, it's referring to the hukim, those ordinances that we just have to keep, even if we don't know why. Follow my hukim and faithfully observe my mitzvot. It's all the teachings that are in the Torah. Tishmoru. We are to observe them. We are to do them, to guard them. Asitem, to make sure that we obey them. Then, look what he says. If you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, I will grant you rains, your rains in their seasons, which means I will bless the land so that the earth yields its produce. These people had left the desert where God had provided for them. Now they were going to be in the land, and the land they had to work. And they ask any farmer, they depend on the land, on the rains. And the trees of the field their fruit. Your threshing shall overtake the vintage, and your vintage shall overtake the sowing. There shall be so much, an overflow of blessing. If, what? You follow my hukim and faithfully observe my commandments. And look what it says. I will grant peace in the land, and you shall lie down untroubled by anyone. I will give the land rest from vicious beasts, from Hamas, from the Houthis, from all those who hate us, and no sword shall cross your land. Why? How? If you follow my hukim and faithfully observe my commandments. How much clearer does it have to be? Your army shall give chase to your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword. 5 of you shall give chase to 100, and 100 of you shall give chase to 10,000. Your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. If what? If we faithfully observe his commandments. I will look with favor upon you, make you fertile, multiply you. I will maintain my covenant with us, that he would always be with us, that he would never leave us or forsake us. You shall eat old grain long stored, and you shall have to clear out the old to make room for the new. I will establish my abode. I will dwell in your midst, my mishkan, and I will not forsake you. That's his promise to us. He will never forsake us. I will be forever in your midst. I will live with you. I will be your God, and you shall be my people. What more do we need? I, the Lord, am your God. He's reminding us again. I brought you out of the land of Egypt. No more slavery for you. I broke the bars of your yoke and made you walk erect. Proud. Not because of ourselves, because we didn't do it. He did it. But we could walk with pride because God is with us. But now comes the buts. And when I was reading this, my heart was breaking. I had to take a break. I couldn't continue because it's so hard for us to read. But if you do not obey me, and if you do not observe all my commandments, my 10 commandments, if you reject my chukim and spurn my mishpatim, so that you do not observe all my commandments. And there were no extra books at this time. There was no midrashim. There was no Talmud. There was no New Testament. There was no Quran. There was nothing but the written 10 commandments. Moses hadn't even written the Torah yet. So this is what he's saying. If you reject what I already gave you on Mount Sinai, and you break my covenant, I, in turn, will do this to you. I will wreak misery upon you, consumption, illness, fever, which cause the eyes to pine. If we wonder why we get sick, it's right here. And the body to languish. You shall sow your seed to no avail, for your enemies will eat it. I will set my face against you. How many people want to hear this? We only want to hear nice things. But that's not what God is telling us. He's warning us. He's begging us. It's like parents who beg their children to please listen to me. Don't hang out with the wrong people. Don't steal. Don't cheat people. You teach them the right values and you beg your kids, because if they don't, they could end up in jail. God is teaching us. You'll be routed by your enemies. And that's what's happening in Israel. Our enemies are driving us crazy. Your foes shall dominate you. Throughout our history, how many times did this happen? When we didn't keep the Shemitah. And I'll read that a little later. We were kicked out of our land. You shall flee though none pursues. That's high anxiety, paranoia. And if for all that, you still do not obey me, I will continue to discipline you 7 times for your sins. Why? Why us more than anyone else? Because to whom much is given, much is required. We were made responsible to our God to live a certain way and teach others to do the same. I will break your proud glory. He's going to break our pride. If we take the glory upon us, he will break us. I will make your skies like iron and your earth like copper. There's a verse later on in the prophecies that talk about the reversal, that he will take the iron away from our skies and bring back the blue, and the earth shall bring forth, it will be green, no longer copper, the color of copper that we see when the earth has no rain, so that your strength shall be spent to no avail. Your land shall not yield its produce, nor shall the trees of the land yield their fruit. If you remain hostile toward me, and how many people, if I mention to God, God, I don't want to hear about him. If you remain hostile toward me and refuse to obey me, the one God, I will continue to smite you sevenfold for your sins. I will loose wild beasts against you, and they shall bereave you of your children and wipe out your cattle. They shall decimate you, and your road shall be deserted. And if these things fail to discipline you for me, and you still remain hostile to me, I too will remain hostile to you. I in turn will smite you sevenfold for your sins. You know, this word seven, we're going to see that over and over and over. Seven means it's a time of completion. The week is done, we have the Shabbat. The 7 weeks, we get to Shavuot coming up soon. The 7 times 7 years is the Jubilee. So here God is doing the opposite. 7 times for your sin. I will bring a sword against you to wreak vengeance for the covenant. And if you withdraw into your cities, I will send pestilence among you. There's no place to hide. And you will be delivered into enemy hands. When I break your staff of bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in a single oven. They shall dole out your bread by weight, and though you eat, you shall not be satisfied. But if, despite this, you still obey me and remain hostile to me, I will act against you with wrath, hostility. I, for my part, will discipline you sevenfold for your sins. Now, this is something that happened from what we're told in Jerusalem when Titus came in and held the city of Jerusalem captive for 2 years. They were eating the flesh of their sons and the flesh of their daughters. How horrid is that? And I heard that the same thing happened during the Holocaust. How horrid is this? And we cried out, where was our God? But he was telling us, obey me, and these things will never happen to you. I will destroy your occult places and cut down your incense stands. We were worshiping the occult. When I think of it, that I did that to the point that I almost died. I will heap your carcasses upon your lifeless fetishes, and I will turn my face from you. These verses hit me so deeply when I first came to read them, because I knew that I had done these things. I will lay your cities ruin. In this case, he laid my life ruin, and make your sanctuaries desolate. I will not savor your pleasing odors, the thing that we think that we can do for God, how we can sacrifice and the things for God. He doesn't care. He wants our heart. I will make the land desolate so that your enemies who settle in it shall be appalled by it. That's exactly what happened when the armies came in from Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, and he took us all captive. And why? We didn't keep the Shemitah, the year of the Shemitah, for 490 years. And you I will scatter among the nations, beginning with Babylon, and then Persia. And a remnant came back, year after year, time after time, we ended up in another place. And I will unsheath the sword against you. Your land shall become a desolation and your cities a ruin. Look what happened when Moshe Dayan went in and took back Jerusalem after was it during the 6 Day War? Look how they found Jerusalem was filthy. The wall was a desolation. It was a ruin. Then shall the land make up for its Sabbath years. God told us that the land needed its Sabbath years. And if we didn't do it, he would do it. He would get us out for 70 years when we were captive in Babylon. Throughout the time that it is desolate and you are in the land of your enemies, then shall the land rest and make up for its Sabbaths. How much clearer can this be? Let me just read where it says here. The Israelites were exiled to Babylon for 70 years as punishment for our disobedience to God, particularly for idol worship and neglect of the Shemitah, for the Sabbath year of the rest. And he talks about it in Jeremiah 25:11 and in Jeremiah 29:10. I recommend that you read those. And he mentions where it mentions the 70-year exile. So if you multiply 70 times 7 years, every 7 years, we get 490. Jeremiah said, "Therefore thus says the Lord of hosts, because you have not heeded my words, I will send and take all the families of the north, says the Lord, and I will send Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. I will bring them against this land." God did that. Against the inhabitants, against the nations round, and I will utterly destroy them and make them an astonishment and a hissing and perpetual desolations. Moreover, I will cause to cease from among them the voice of joy, the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, the voice of the bride, the sound of the millstones, and the light of the lamp. And this whole land shall be a desolation and a waste, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. Jeremiah is known as the wailing, the weeping prophet. And then in 29:10 he says, for this is what God says, after 70 years are accomplished for Babylon, I will remember you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place. And in 2 Chronicles 36, verses 20 and 21, he says, and those who had escaped from the sword are carried away to Babylon. They were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, when we have Darius or Cyrus to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah. He is the one who told Nehemiah to go back and rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. After the land was paid her Sabbaths, for as long as she lay desolate, she kept the Sabbath to fulfill the 70 years. Then the land make up for its Sabbath years throughout the time that is desolate, and you are in the land of your enemies. Then shall the land rest and make up for its Sabbath years. Throughout the land that it is desolate, it shall observe the rest that it did not observe when you were living in the land in your Sabbath years. See, we, as his people Israel, no matter where we are responsible. We need to do what God is telling us to do. As for those of you who survive, I will cast a faintness in their hearts in the land of their enemies. I don't know about you, but there are days when I sense that faintness of heart in my own heart. The sound of a driven leaf shall put them to flight, living with anxiety, fleeing as though from the sword. They shall fall, though none pursue. We may feel like that there are enemies pursuing us, but it's our own anxiety. With no one pursuing, they shall stumble over one another, as before the sword. You shall not be able to stand your ground before your enemies, but you shall perish among the nations, and the land of your enemies shall consume you. We see that in so many countries now in Europe. In before, thank God, this president was put in, how many of us were fearful, taking over the universities, burning the flags of our countries, and we lived in fear. Those of you who survive shall be heartsick over their iniquity in the land of your enemies. Moreover, they shall be heartsick over the iniquities of their forebears, and they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their forebears, in that they trespassed against me, in that they were hostile to me. When I, in turn, have been hostile to them, and have removed them into the land of their enemies. And listen to this. Then at last shall their stubborn heart humble itself, and they shall atone, they shall be sorry for the things that they did. Not only us. When we read the Torah, I remember reading the book of Nehemiah and Ezra. And when they returned to the land, there were a few people who went to the land and they found Torah and they read it. Ezra read it before all the people who were there. And they were weeping because they remembered what they didn't do. And they humbled themselves. Then I will remember my covenant with Jacob. And I will remember my covenant with Isaac. And I will remember my covenant with Abraham. And I will remember the land. For the land shall be forsaken of them. It would be making up the Shabbat years, the Shemitah, by being desolate, by us being off the land, because we were so disobedient, while they atone for their iniquity, for the abundant reason that they rejected my rules, my chukim, and they turned their faces away. They didn't want to read and obey my mishpatim. Yet even then, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them or turn my face from them, spurn them, so as to utterly destroy them or annul my covenant with them. For I, the Lord, am their God. He's speaking to us. This is us today. We can't keep, it's true, the Shabbat year of the land here, but we can obey to the best of our abilities the 10 commandments that he gave us. Because God will then remember in our favor the covenant with the ancients, our forefathers, whom I freed from the land of Egypt in sight of the nations to be their God. I am Yud He Vav He. And these are the rules, the laws, the chukim, the mishpatim, Torah, Toratot. These are the laws, the Torah, Asher Natan, which he gave, which the God gave, Benot, Bnei Israel, through Moses. Where's Moshe? Here. Behar Sinai beyad Moshe, by the hand of Moses. It wasn't Moses who wrote the commandments on stone. As I've heard even rabbis say, oh, he was wise. He went up on Mount Sinai and he carved it and he came up with it. No. It was the instructions that God established. The laws, the rules, the instructions, the chukim, the mishpatim, the mitzvot, God gave them to us through the hand of Moses. He went up on Mount Sinai. He received them. How did he live for 40 days and 40 nights with no water and no food? I can't do it for 2 days. And Moses, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelite people and say to them, I'm not going to read the last chapter here, that you can read on your own. But I think that what we've read here is enough to inspire some of us to have some comments about it. Miriam, you're on mute.
I didn't forget tonight. I just had no sense of time. I was trying to give a donation somewhere for my friend's birthday. And I looked at my watch, anyway, sorry, I was
Okay,
7
because
minutes
nobody
late.
knows. I didn't tell them you weren't on. I just began. So you
I
really
noticed.
didn't have to confess. I already knew.
What's this?
You didn't have to make a confession to us because I just
Well,
began.
it's almost 7 minute
Okay.
confession.
Yeah,
Okay,
but yeah.
it's
Didn't show
okay.
up. What's that name? Didn't show up.
Who? Jerry?
There.
Jerry's here and Richard's here.
Oh, you got it.
Okay, but I want to hear now about what you have to say about what you heard.
When it said at the beginning of the readings that if we don't obey God and keep the commandments, 10 commandments, that this would happen and that would happen, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can see in many ages in different lands. It's happened in Germany, it's happened here, it happened there. But is it also referring to Babylon? Specific at this, like,
Absolutely.
so, I mean, that's what I take it to kind of mean at that point. I mean, you can attribute,
Well, of course, because remember the Torah is giving us a pattern,
yeah,
and the pattern, the formula, and which began in Egypt, right up to our first dispersion from the land. These are patterns that repeat and repeat and repeat themselves. Just like when we're a child and we're taught a pattern, we're taught a paradigm, and we repeat them throughout our lives that cause us to behave in a certain way. So God was taking us out of what he didn't, the way he didn't want us to live, and gave us a new way of living. So that's it.
well,
Okay, I guess it's simple.
it's pretty direct.
What more can we say? All we have to do is learn the commandments and spend time on them every day.
But you know what?
That's life. And I see it in my life where I am so blessed because he talks to us. If you obey, you will be blessed. It's not because it's two sides of the same coin. God will never leave us or forsake us. Yeah, go ahead.
I always say this because it just seems so obvious, but when we talk about obeying the commandments, a lot of people are moral and they do this and do that because God has put his moral code, I believe, in us. But it's not just that. So when you say obey the commandments, to me, it's equal at first to saying, for the first commandment, it's acknowledging that I am God and that there's a God. But a lot of people are like they'll say, I've heard a lot of secular Jewish people, for example, say, I don't know what I believe if I believe in God, but I believe in being a good person, like being a moral person. But that's certainly not the complete story. God does want us to do those things. So, but when you say the commandments, I think a lot of people are like now theoretically out there saying, but I'm good. I don't steal. I don't kill. So but to me, more specifically and importantly, the base of everything, even the idea, what good is and what bad is God. So it's not enough to keep the commandments and say, well, I don't know, there's God, there's not God. So it's not
I'm
just
not sure I understand what you're
I'm saying it's not just about keeping the commandments doesn't just mean, okay, I don't steal, number one. I don't I don't kill. I don't. I'm not. I don't treat my parents badly. There are a lot of people who do those things, but they don't believe in God. So
Right,
only
because
God.
the commandments are written on the heart of every human being.
Yes.
But once we know that there's a God, and once we know that there is a higher authority to whom we are accountable, and and once you know that, that's when we become more responsible. Because remember, he's not only speaking to us as one person, he's speaking to us as a peoplehood, a nation, the nation of Israel. Look, when we sing on Shabbat, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, from Mitzion will come forth the Torah and the laws from the Jerusalem. You know, the God of Israel has formed a people, Israel. And we are now scattered around the world. We're not only living in the land, there's a few, half of us are in the land and half of us are around the world. And there's so many more because who don't even acknowledge that they're Jews, but they come from the our forefathers. But they may not, we don't know who is and who isn't. So, but all we know now is that one of the things that the Bible tells us is that there always is a remnant. And it's almost like the remnant holds on to the truth no matter what. Throughout the ages, there's always been a remnant set apart by God. Like when the prophets, Elijah was challenged by the 450 prophets of Baal. He was the remnant. Elijah was the remnant. And God showed through destroying the offerings of the prophets of Baal and those false prophets who the true one was. Well, it was like 450 to 1. So, you know, there, and when we look at what does it mean? Do I keep the Shabbat? Well, some people say, yeah, I kind of keep the Shabbat, but what does it mean? Do you really trust him on that day?
But that's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
saying
well,
it
I
in a
didn't.
different way, that it's not just I don't steal, I don't. That's all I'm saying, because I know what you're saying when you say just keep the commandments. But the way the world often, in talking to the people, oh yeah, the Ten Commandments, sure, I don't kill, I don't steal, but it's more, it's deeper than that. Like as you said, keeping
Well,
the
of course.
Shabbat is not. I know you know that, but just I find that it needs to be clarified that it's the commandments aren't separate from God. They're not just a moral. A lot of people have moral codes. Anyway, that's all I'm saying.
But
You're saying, what is the Shabbat? The Shabbat, to me, like it says, he gave it as
right, of his existence.
a sign that he created, that is real.
Yeah.
That's awesome to me. It's
Yeah, and yet you have huge amounts, billions of people who say the Sunday is the Shabbat or the
yeah.
Friday is the Shabbat. They chose the day. They changed what God gave us.
Mhm.
And if we say no, but the Shabbat is for the whole world, it sounds confusing because the way the Shabbat is portrayed today, it's a day of such religiosity that it's almost impossible for people to keep it the way you're supposed to keep it according to the way it's been written. And yet God said it's just a day when you separate yourself, separate one day from the rest of the week, and just acknowledge my presence and just don't work. Don't earn a salary on that day. Give me that day. It's for me. It's not for him, it's for us. And the same with honoring our parents, that we maybe live long upon the land. It's for us to love ourselves. Wow, if I honor my parents, if I don't hate them for things that they did to me, and oh, they were so mean, and they didn't care about me. But what does honoring mean? We honor the place of the authority that they've been given, even if they're lousy parents. They still represent authority. And if we refuse to accept that there's a higher authority, starting with our parents, next into the court system, our teachers are an authority, our government leaders are authority, even if they're terrible, there's still an authority out there. We'll never honor the fact that and revere and fear a holy God, a separate God. So, I mean, each one of the commandments is so filled. There's so many other things about it. It's not just one commandment. There's so many ways that we can look at them, and that's what I'm talking about. And that's what the Torah does. It tells us how to keep them, and it's a choice that we make. Am I going to be just in this situation? If I find a wallet, what do I do with this wallet? Somebody lost it. Let me open it up and see the name in there. Let me find the best way that I can to return it. In the Bible, they'll say, well, if a donkey fell into a hole and it's your enemy, it's a donkey of your enemies, and I don't like this guy, I'm not going to take care of his donkey. What if you find a wallet that belongs to somebody you hate? Well, you still have to give it back because it has nothing to do with them. It's our behavior. How are we? Don't defraud anybody. Treat them well. Treat your neighbor the way you would want to be treated yourself. Every single day we struggle with these things over and over. Do I call a relative? It's not only a parent. I have an elderly aunt, and she's all by herself. When we go and we take Mildred out and we taking care of her, she has nobody, but we're honoring her. We're taking care of her, or she would be gone. This is it's everything. It's bigger than what it looks like simply on a page, and the religions have changed. Even the first commandment was changed. They start with "You shall have no other gods." Why? Because they believe in another God. They don't say that this God is the God who brought us out of Egypt, out of slavery. They're changing what God said. Jerry, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't have a comment on this section, Peggy.
What he's saying, it's interesting because he's saying that, with the Yovel, the Jubilee, it's at the time of Yom Kippur, time of covering, and it's a time of joy. And at that time, he's telling us to humble ourselves, humble our souls, so that we can, because it's only in humility, truly in humility, that we can hear God. Because anybody who's too proud like Pharaoh cannot hear God. Anyway, that's for me a very powerful portion. Richard, do you have anything you want to add before we finish?
I'm good with.
Sorry, Richard.
I've said enough. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. I want to wish you all a wonderful evening, a Shabbat Shalom, and God willing, we'll see you again next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.